Cheese is a delicious food consumed worldwide. But is eating cheese good if you're trying to lose weight? Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Young, a naturopathic doctor in Toronto. Let's talk about cheese and if you should eat it for weight loss. Cheese comes from removing much of the water and other components from animal milk and leaving mostly the protein casein. Casein is a protein found in milk, alongside other proteins, and extracting this protein and concentrating it to create cheese is what gives cheese its high protein concentrations. Cheese making is a craft with a long history and tradition. Generally, cheese is created by fermenting milk, then treating it with an enzyme called rennet that clumps all the protein together. Once the clumps are formed, it's further dehydrated and then taken through a number of other preparations, like additional fermentation or heating, that are different depending on different types of cheeses. Different types of cheeses. Because there are so many different cheeses, I'm going to try focusing on two major characteristics of cheeses, which are soft versus hard cheeses, and fresh versus aged cheeses. Now, I'm not a cheese expert, so you'll have to bear with me if I make mistakes or overgeneralize, but feel free to correct me in the comments down below. Softer and creamier cheeses like Brie and Camembert tend to have more fat than protein. The saturated fat content is what contributes to the creamy nature of the cheese. Harder cheeses like cheddar, Swiss, Parmesan, and Romano tend to have more overall protein, with Parmesan being one of the cheeses highest in protein per weight. Keep in mind that even though hard cheeses tend to have more protein than soft cheeses, this doesn't necessarily mean that soft cheeses have more overall calories or fat than hard cheeses. In fact, many of the hard cheeses have similar, if not more, calories and fat than the softer cheeses. They just also happen to have much more protein than their soft counterparts. Fresher cheeses like goat cheese, feta, ricotta, and cottage cheese are packaged and served soon after the cheese-making process and are not allowed to sit and age for long. They have a lighter and more mild flavor to them and tend to be higher in moisture due to their higher water content. They also tend to be lower in calories per weight, with cottage cheese being one of the lowest calorie cheeses. Aged cheeses like cheddar, blue, gorgonzola, Gouda, and Parmesan have been allowed to age or ferment for longer periods of time and tend to become drier in the process, resulting in a lower moisture content but may still be soft like gorgonzola. They also tend to have a sharper, stronger, and more distinct taste to them, and also tend to have more calories than fresher cheeses. Processed cheese is a cheese that has been mixed with various non-dairy ingredients, like emulsifiers, sweeteners, and artificial coloring and flavors, and is usually the cheese with the lowest protein and nutrition, and highest sugar content. In general, most clinicians recommend you stay away from this type of cheese if possible. So, is cheese good for weight loss? Let's go over some of its strengths and weaknesses. Strength: good appetite suppression. Cheese is quite high in protein and fat, and mostly lower in sugars, making it a good food to help improve fullness and suppress hunger. Because protein is less efficiently converted into stored fat in our bodies, cheeses with higher protein content would be best suited for this role. Harder cheeses like cheddar, Swiss, and Parmesan tend to fit this role well. Weakness: high calorie density. Although harder cheeses have a higher amount of protein, they also tend to be the cheeses with higher calorie densities, meaning you'll have to be careful in controlling the amounts you consume. Fresher cheeses like cottage cheese, ricotta, and feta cheese tend to be the cheeses with lower calorie densities than their peers. Strength: good nutrition density. Deficiencies in calcium and vitamin D may make it more difficult for your body to properly lose weight and slow down fat loss. The harder cheeses tend to provide the highest amounts of calcium. For example, 1 ounce of Parmesan cheese provides slightly more calcium than 1 full cup of 2% milk, with about the same amount of calories. It also contains a number of B vitamins and minerals that are involved in the metabolic process of breaking down fat. Cheese itself does not usually have significant amounts of vitamin D, however, unless it happens to be made with a milk that has already been fortified with vitamin D. Weakness: high in sodium. Cheese also tends to be higher in sodium, meaning you'll need to be careful if you have issues with blood pressure or on a diet that restricts sodium, such as the DASH diet. Overall, cheese can provide a good amount of nutrition, protein, and fat to help with hunger. However, due to its high calorie concentration and sodium levels, it would be a good idea to keep track of how much cheese you're consuming on a daily basis while on your weight loss diet. Because the amounts of calories, protein, fat, and sodium vary so much between different cheeses, your best bet is to keep track of each cheese separately, then add them all up for a total value rather than trying to generalize all cheeses. My suggestion is, if you like cheese, you can add or use cheese as a way to improve the nutrition and fullness of certain meals. For example, you could sprinkle a measured amount of Parmesan or cheese onto a salad to boost its hunger-suppressing qualities. Or, if you prefer to eat it straight up as a snack, I would consider the lower-calorie cheeses such as cottage cheese. For example, having half a cup of low-fat cottage cheese after your exercise as a post-workout meal. So if you're a cheese lover, don't fret. Cheese can be a part of your weight loss diet. Just make sure you track and control your intake to ensure you don't end up eating too much. Do you eat cheese on your weight loss diet? And what type of cheese do you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video helpful, please leave me a like. As before, I'm Dr. Brian Young, bringing you weight loss info on this channel. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're interested in learning more, and share it with someone you know can use the help.